Bring in John Curtis in Glasgow. John, you're a professor and a polling expert. How is Theresa May being seen in the UK at the moment?
Well, I think she's certainly seen as somebody who is resilient, but also as somebody who, at the moment at least, is likely to struggle to get the House of Commons to endorse whatever is the final deal that emerges out of Brussels on Sunday, assuming it does indeed emerge out of Brussels on Sunday. And, for example, it's pretty clear that the vast majority of the public, and this has been true for some time, are not entirely happy with the way in which she's been handling the negotiations. They don't think she's done terribly well. And that's a mood that's now relatively common amongst those who voted to leave, as well as those who voted to remain. So what Theresa May is hoping that this next week is going to bring is to bring a political agreement about our future relationship with the European Union that will help to sugar the pill so far as those on her side of the House of Commons are concerned, many of whom are saying they're not willing to vote for it. Now, ironically, there's something of a similarity of view between between the European Union and the Brexiteers in the House of Commons, because one of the subjects on which it's pretty clear that the negotiations about the political agreement are so far struggling is indeed the question of our trading relationship, in particular, whether or not the UK would be allowed to be at least in the single market for at least certain aspects of goods, which was a proposal that was in the so-called Chequers Agreement that the UK government unveiled back in July. Now, that's something the Prime Minister's been pushing. She thinks it will help our long-term economic relationship with the European Union, but it's one on which the European Union are reportedly reluctant to concede, and it's also something on which the Brexiteers are not too happy. So, ironically, it may be that if Mrs May were to fail to actually get what she wants in the political agreement, it might make it somewhat easier for her to sell that agreement to some of the more sceptical members on her own side in the House of Commons.
And again, what about the general public? The clock is ticking, but March 29th is still 4 months away at least. What's the feeling amongst the people? Are there people who do want a second referendum on Brexit, this so-called people's vote? And if so, could that even still happen at this point?
Well, I think the first of all is if you are somebody who voted Remain, there's about in 2 and 3 chance that you are in favour of a second EU referendum. If you're somebody who voted Leave, it's relatively unlikely that you're in favour of such a referendum. So the polls therefore tend to get at best a small majority in favour of so-called people's vote. Certainly when you make it clear that that will be a vote where the choice will be between the deal that emerges out of the Brussels negotiations and remaining inside the European Union. So it's very much a partisan question. And given, in terms of the outcome of that possible referendum, well, the truth is the polls suggest it's very, very close. A small lead for Remain at the moment, but primarily dependent on the views of those who did not vote in 2016, who might or who might not turn out a second time around. Meanwhile, certainly what is pretty clear is that, many a Leave voter, around 50% or so of Leave voters, would be willing to contemplate no deal with the European Union. But, the other half of Leave voters are not so keen on the idea, and virtually no Remain voters want it. So therefore, certainly the prospect of no deal is not something that the majority of voters would want to contemplate, and it's certainly not something that MPs seem to be minded to accept, which does therefore mean that if indeed this deal failed, well, we don't know, frankly, what will happen. Maybe the government will even collapse. But certainly if the deal is rejected, that might just perhaps open up the possibility that maybe there will be a second vote. Though for that to happen, the Labour Party will have to commit itself to the idea, and at the moment it's still sitting on the fence.
Indeed. Thanks for that, John. John Curtis there, a polling expert speaking to us from Glasgow.